Welcome to Season 3 of Public Health on Call, a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm Josh Sharfstein, Vice Dean for Public Health Practice and Community Engagement and a former Secretary of Maryland's Health Department. Our goal is to bring scientific evidence and experience to the public health news of the day through informative interviews with scientists, community leaders, policy experts, public health officials, clinicians, and more. If you have ideas or questions for us to cover, please email us at publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Smith Rogers, producer of Public Health on Call. Today, Stephanie Desmond talks to Dr. Carrie Althoff and Dr. Laura Murray of Johns Hopkins about dating in a pandemic. They talk about balancing the risks of COVID-19 with the need for human contact and how trust takes on a whole new meaning when a single date can mean exposure to a deadly disease. Let's listen.
Carrie Althoff and Laura Murray, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Stephanie.
So let's talk today about dating in a pandemic. So, dating in general, of course, is extremely fraught with all kinds of emotion and all kinds of, concerns about trust and concerns about safety. And I guess the pandemic obviously adds a whole bunch of new layers to it. And I want to start with you, Laura. I mean, couldn't we just have people not date during the pandemic?
Well, good question, Stephanie. I'm not sure that would be the best thing. I think there's probably a lot of folks out there saying, please don't take this away from me. Human connection is so important. And developmentally, it's really important to ourselves to develop relationships and understand that dynamic. And because the pandemic is not a quick thing, it is important that people continue to develop relationships and date and things like that. So I think moving on to problem solving of how do you do that safely and in a way that you feel comfortable is probably the best way to go about it.
Well, I was sort of kidding when I asked, because obviously people
I'm sure
can't put off their lives for all this time. But I imagine that it adds a whole level of concern about safety. And so, Carrie, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. I know we've talked in the past about, not expanding your pod. And that's kind of exactly what you're asking people to do when you begin dating.
I think there are a lot of things you can do before you start that physical contact with somebody in a close setting. And actually, I am going to be very interested to see how this plays out in terms of having sustainable long-term relationships, right? So there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of getting to know each other. Then there's a lot of understanding people's risk and benefit calculation in this pandemic. And are you on the same page? Are you on different pages? So, this is going to be a time in dating where if you don't have strong communication skills, now's the time to really practice them and get them keyed up. And those skills are lifelong skills for all relationships. So having those conversations, getting on the same page about risk and risk tolerance, and then finding your way through with open communication with that other person is really, I think, probably foundational for a healthy lifelong relationship, if we're so lucky to find one.
And as you say, it doesn't have to start with physical contact.
That's right. So, a lot of conversations, and people have been dating online and meeting people online. I think it's just an extension of that period a little bit more, right? So it's going to be more talking through text messages on the telephone or through teleconference means to see one another. And then perhaps once you're both ready, it kind of increases in terms of perhaps an outdoor date with masks on 6 feet apart, because again, getting to know this person is important, but so is your health. And so is the other person's health. And so walking into this knowing exactly what you're comfortable with and being very clear about that with the other person is going to be key. If it does escalate to a place where you're like, we're ready to have some physical contact, think about where you have been and where that other person has been in the last 14 days, because they're bringing those exposures to that close contact that you're planning. And, if you can, maybe get tested. Remember that testing is not zero risk. Even a negative test does not mean zero risk. You could have been infected, just a few days before and could be infectious without yet having symptoms. So it's not 100%, but it does give you a little bit more information to help you understand your risk calculation a little bit better when you're considering physical contact.
And Laura, trust obviously is a big thing in any relationship. And it's really important now. I mean, you have to trust that this person hasn't been with a lot of other people, or if they say they've been quarantining at home, that they really mean it.
So true. So true, which is it's a tough position to be in, depending on how well you know the person or if you don't know them that well. I think one of the most important things is, as Carrie was saying, to write down, what do you feel comfortable with? What do you need? What are your concerns? You might even, for example, create and practice a script where you say, in the past, I've heard of situations where people do have this discussion and the person hasn't been honest. And I just want to let you know that I'd prefer honesty. I'm not going to think, bad of you in any way. So you can also address the trust issue directly and just let them know that it's one of your concerns.
I know that online dating is obviously really big right now. I got married almost 2 years ago and I met my husband online. So there's no stigma to me with online dating, but it seems to me that is really the only way right now to meet somebody, making this whole process not particularly natural.
I'll just jump in here and I actually am in Houston, Texas. So there's actually in the South, quite a few people that are still meeting others because they're at outdoor groups or facilities or in parks. I've also heard of a lot of people meeting through friends more like we used to in the old days, right? Like, hey, I actually have this trusted friend. I actually know what they're doing. So there seems to be somewhat of a new culture also of, if you're not meeting out at places, you're meeting again through people, through friends. Here, we've seen a lot of people reconnecting with older friends, right? One of the things COVID has done is created an opportunity for all of us to reach out perhaps more to people that we haven't reached out to before. And we see that happening in the younger dating groups also. So I think there's a number of options. It depends how motivated you are and how interested you are in working through the dating challenges through COVID.
That's a very interesting perspective.
It is amazing. I mean, there is not a relationship that has been untouched by COVID, and dating is just a part of that. So, yeah, I think the dating world had a leg up on everybody with the online opportunities even before COVID.
For sure.
And it is so interesting to see everything morph again, right? And even though, there are lots of distance between us physically, it is amazing how we are relying on friendships and human connection to help us all navigate. And people are meeting interesting new people through those connections. It's really fascinating and wonderful. We'll see where this all goes, but I have a feeling the landscape of dating has changed forever.
One thing I wonder about, and I think this is probably for Laura, but I know that, I'm probably not my best self right now after spending, almost a year working at home and all the challenges that come along with that. Some people may not be working. Some people are really struggling with the loneliness of this. How are people ready to meet someone in this current stage? And how do you know?
Wow, such a great question, Stephanie. And I think a lot of us are dealing with, we've just been through a lot of changes. A lot of things have happened. Many have a lot more worries or anxiety, perhaps, than they used to. With building relationships, we try not to think about it like, am I ready? We don't want you holding back. We don't want anyone really holding back to say, well, I'm going to wait until I'm my best self. One of the reasons we talk about that is becoming our best selves is a journey throughout life, right? There's really not an end time to that. One year we might be better at a particular sport. Another year, we might excel in our career. So there's so many assets and diverse parts of ourselves. So we like to talk about, especially with young people, this is part of acceptance. This is part of, hey, this is who I am right now. This is sort of how I look when I've gone through some things. And particularly with dating, when you're starting to get into a more serious relationship, these are actually really great experiences. Can you get through that? Can you love someone through their flaws, which we all have? So, you know me, Stephanie, I like to just see everything as an opportunity. What's the opportunity in this instead of the challenge in it?
And even if maybe we're not all thinking of ourselves as our best selves, I do think people are very much their authentic selves in times of this kind of stress and this kind of just challenge in our world, we find out more about who we are as individuals. And so accepting that part of yourself and bringing that part as your whole self to a dating situation, you might be surprised as to who you find and who you connect with.
I spoke with a dear friend of mine who is single and lives in New York. And I know she's very lonely, and that she has created this pod of people around her, friends that she said she might not have otherwise found or spent so much time with, but they're safe and she's lonely. Is there sort of this concern of perhaps settling for something at this moment?
So I don't know if I would consider things as a settlement at this point. I think we do have to be aware that as things continue to change and morph, people will continue to change and morph. And so, starting a relationship right now is something that absolutely can be done, but it is also going to need to be a place where people are accepting not only during this time, but as we recover from this pandemic as well.
And this has got to be hard on relationships generally. I mean, I've been reading about how this is obviously off topic a bit, but how there's more divorces because people are, trapped at home and unhappy with the lives that they have. So I guess this is a time of change for a lot of people.
Yeah, divorces and babies. I mean, that's what we look for after pandemics like this. There are a lot of changes going on in people's lives. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be a one-on-one relationship with a significant other to combat loneliness and to feel connected. Having other communities that you're connected to, and similar to your friend in New York who may not have otherwise had that community, there is an opportunity in that to feel connected, which is so important, whether it be connection through dating and meeting someone new or connection through new communities. It's just simply about the connection.
And I guess we have to have some serious ground rules, though, if we're dating. Kind of reminds me of the conversation you have when you're negotiating with someone about sex, about whether they have a sexually transmitted disease. In many ways, COVID is kind of like the updated version of that.
Boy, you hit on a serious communication topic, Stephanie, for sure. It is. I think it's conflicting a lot of the younger folks. How do you have this conversation? When do you have this conversation? How direct do you need to be? To be practical, this goes back to take some time to figure out yourself. What are you comfortable with? Do you feel comfortable with certain things? What do you need? What risks are you willing to take? Write those down. I think it's always a good idea to practice what you're going to say, depending on the response. A lot of people are having these exchanges via text also. So just sort of throwing it out there in a perhaps safer way. That's also an option. Really see it, though, as an opportunity, like Carrie said in the beginning. Communication skills are going to stay with you. And for the rest of these young folks' lives, they are going to have to negotiate different things in relationships, in jobs, in all sorts of areas. And so I also have known a lot of young people, honestly, who have started YouTubing negotiation skills. And how do you work with that? And that's really fun to see that, it's a little bit of a back and forth of what do we feel comfortable with. I also have heard from a lot of young people that they're learning much more quickly about trust. So coming back to your trust issue, Stephanie, I've heard a lot of situations where there was a negotiation, there was a clear agreement, and that agreement was broken. And so people are saying, we're learning earlier on who I would stay with and who I would continue that relationship versus not because of COVID.
This question just totally gets at my little 13-year-old public health heart. When I was an HIV peer educator, and negotiating safe sex was a huge part of that. Negotiating safe contact in COVID is a skill, and it's going to be an amazing skill to develop. And I second what Laura said. Practice. Find your peers. Test out those dialogues, whether they're over the phone, over a video conferencing service, or over text. And test them out, because I think it's also important to note that older adults are also dating right now, not just younger adults. And everybody has kind of a different approach to that communication piece and a different kind of cultural norm around their way that they communicate with someone they're dating. So try it out with your friends until you're comfortable, because those skills need practice just like all of our other skills.
Carrie Althoff and Laura Murray, thank you so much for giving us a lot to think about.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Public Health on Call is produced by Josh Sharfstein, Lindsay Smith-Rogers, and Stephanie Desmond. Audio production by Spencer Greer, Niall Owen McCusker, C.N. Oates, and Matthew Martin, with support from Chip Hickey. Distribution by Nick Moran. Production support from Catherine Ricardo and Neiman Outland. Social media support from Brenda Haggader, Grace Holes Fernandez, and Caroline Wong. Thank you for listening.